Saddam Hussein would never comply. And what he was trying to do was just stretch it out. More inspections, more time, let's delay, let's give a little here, give a little there. Let's see if we can break this consensus. And with the certainty of a French veto and possibly other vetoes, this was not the time to have further division within the Council by taking this to a vote. I've got one more. Let me, excuse me. Yeah.
Mr. Secretary, you seemed to imply yesterday on one of the shows that you believe French commercial interests would help drive the position. I'm wondering if you can elaborate on that, and how firm a guarantee do we have that Turkey won't send its troops well into northern Iraq and cause problems with the Kurds there?
I made the point that they're, in response to the question, that of course they're commercial interest that everybody has to consider. And the French have, for years, had difficulties with the inspection regime. And I pointed out in one of the shows yesterday that when you go back to 1998 and early 1999, when the current inspection regime was being developed, when UNMOVIC was being created after the collapse of the previous inspection regime, France worked actively for a number of months, in our judgment, to try to weaken that inspection regime. And at the end of the day, when compromises had been made and everybody thought we had a good outcome before our time, the previous administration, even then France abstained from voting for it. And so that is of concern to us. But in 1441, France was solidly on board, and when you look at the statements that were made by French officials right after the passage of 1441, it was absolutely clear that they understood that Saddam Hussein and the Iraqi regime had weapons of mass destruction. It's not something just known to American intelligence. It's known to all of the major intelligence agencies in the world. And France acknowledged that. Everybody acknowledged that when they signed on to 1441, because that's what it says. It's in, Iraq is in material breach, has been in material breach, and now has the opportunity to either get out of the problem or get into further material breach. And what they did was get into further material breach. And that's our judgment, and we believe that the test of the resolution has been met with respect to the appropriateness of application of serious consequences.
And the Turks and the Kurds?
Barbara? Yeah. I'm sorry. On the Turks and the situation in northern Iraq, we are in the closest consultation with the Turks, and let me say that we are very sensitive to Turkish concerns. We appreciate the fact that the Turkish government did take our request for deployments into their parliament at a difficult time for them, with a prime minister who is still coming in, so to speak. Mr. Erdogan was not the prime minister at that time. And we are in the closest touch with them now on a number of issues. One, the possibility of resubmission, and he is committed to do that at a time that he believes is appropriate. And secondly, we don't think it would be useful right now to create any additional tension on the border between Turkey and northern Iraq, and we are in discussions with them as to how to make sure that tensions can be kept at the lowest point and not to have difficulty in northern Iraq of the kind that concerns them. And we have also assured the Turks that in anything that the future might hold, we are committed to the territorial integrity of Iraq.
I wanted to ask, just some personal reflections. After 1441 was passed, you were a very, very happy man, and certainly it was quite a triumph. How have you been feeling the last few weeks? When did you realize that this was not going to happen? Do you wish you'd done anything differently? Do you wish you'd traveled more, changed your tactics in any way?
This legend that is out there now that Colin Powell, the first variation of it was he doesn't travel, and the next variation was he hates to travel, and the third variation was he will never travel and doesn't want to travel. You do your job by personal contact, by travel, and by the use of modern technology so that you can get more bang for the time. And so in the last 6 weeks, I have had 4 personal one-on-one meetings, direct meetings, with the French foreign minister, with the British foreign minister, with the Russian foreign minister, 5 such meetings with the Chinese foreign minister, I have gone to Davos in Switzerland, where I addressed an international setting, and at that meeting I met with the Turkish Prime Minister for almost 2 hours, and the incoming Turkish Prime Minister, Mr. Erdogan. I have had a Turkish delegation here in the department, a full delegation, the Foreign Minister, the Finance Minister, and they came to my home till midnight as we worked on the economic package. And so I believe that I have used my time properly. At the same time, I went to Asia a few weeks ago, so I travel when I believe travel is appropriate. I like to travel more, but you know, the Secretary of State has many responsibilities that he or she has to deal with, and one has to balance it all. But I assure you that I do not shrink back from traveling, and I will be traveling again soon.
But any regrets, anything you've done differently?
No. I mean, you can always look and say you should have done this, should have done that, but the fact of the matter is we came up with a good resolution, and we got a solid vote for it, 15-0. And then for a period of 4 months after that, we worked hard with the inspectors. We provided them intelligence. The focus really was at the UN in New York, not a lot of other places. That's where we had to concentrate our effort. And we did everything we could to try to persuade the Council that what they were seeing was not compliance. What they were seeing was passive cooperation that didn't get to the heart of the matter, which was a strategic decision by Saddam Hussein to comply. And that's what we weren't able to get, and that's what we weren't able to convince some members of the Council is what was needed in order for us to believe that Saddam Hussein was a changed regime, was leading a changed regime that was willing now to cooperate with the international community and comply with its obligations. One last one. Sorry.
Mr. Secretary, you said that the ultimatum would be for Saddam Hussein to leave Iraq. Is there any form of disarmament or cooperation at this stage which could save his skin?
I think the time for diplomacy has passed. I think that's pretty clear. That's what the leaders were saying in the Azores yesterday. We used last evening and this morning to consult broadly around the world. We did, the British did, the Spanish did. A lot of people have been talking to each other this morning and overnight, and it became clear that it would be best at this time to withdraw the resolution, and I can think of nothing that Saddam Hussein could do diplomatically. I think that time is now over. He had his chance. He's had many chances over the last 12 years, and he has blown every one of those chances. Thank you.
Secretary of State Colin Powell appearing shortly after the United Nations Security Council collapsed its diplomatic efforts when it was clear that the French would veto the resolution put forward by the United Kingdom. Let's go now quickly to NBC's Chief Foreign Affairs Correspondent, Andrea Mitchell. The President will say tonight, Andrea, that Saddam Hussein has X number of hours to leave with members of his family and other top members of the Ba'ath Socialist Party there. What are the realistic hopes within the administration that, in fact, he'll go into exile?
Intelligence officials have been working on this very hard, Tom. There is very little hope that he would take this exit and leave. And we should point out that even if he were to leave with his immediate family, there would still be military action because the U.S. would still go in to clean out weapons of mass destruction and to root out the rest of the regime and the Ba'ath Party. Tom?
And at the Pentagon, NBC, Jim Miklashevsky, what about the oil fields, Jim?
Well, Tom, there's new intelligence that indicates that Saddam Hussein is preparing to destroy his oil fields. Not only that he's probably rigged explosives to some of the oil wellheads, but that he may already be beginning to flood the deserts by opening up some of the oil spigots and allowing the oil to flow free.
All right, and General Barry McCaffrey, who is an NBC News analyst, of course, served with distinction during the Persian Gulf War. General, what are your concerns if we were to go to war by the end of this week?
Well, I don't think I have any real serious ones. I think the initial assault elements, Tom, are there to be able to go in and certainly crack all the forces south of the Euphrates and close up on Baghdad. They'll have this rolling start. They'll have to bring in second echelon troops, but there's 1,000 aircraft, 1,000 Tomahawk missiles, and 160,000 troops in place.
And what about Miklashevsky's report that he could flood the fields with oil?
I think all these tricks Saddam will try, many of his chain of command simply aren't going to follow instructions. There will also be a very extraordinary and daring special operations and electronic warfare campaign. And finally, they're going to take out the command and control in the first hour of the war. So there'll be a huge amount of momentum to roll these people up in the first few days of combat.
All right, thanks very much, General Barry McCaffrey. In the Kuwaiti desert now with the 3rd Infantry on the phone is NBC's David Bloom. David, is there a change in tenor there where you are?
There is, Tom, and I'd cite a couple of examples. First off, today for the first time we've seen the A-10 Warthogs, the Air Force's close air support planes, flying missions above us here. We're about 30 miles south of the Iraqi border. In addition to that, we've also seen the tanks and the Bradleys. There are about 250 tanks in the 3rd Infantry Division up practicing on the Udari range with their live ammunition. The U.S. military is also receiving reports that Iraq is moving to the south, not only their artillery, but also potentially chemical weapons, but they're certainly gearing up for that possibility. The troops here are going to be watching the president's speech about 4 a.m. local time, and then they'll see what orders they get after that. Tom.
All right, thanks very much, NBC. David Bloom, who is with the 3rd Infantry, the mechanized division that will be one of the points on the spear should it come to war, and it appears very likely now that could happen by the end of this week. We'll hear from the president tonight. At 8, we'll have complete details on NBC Nightly News, continuing coverage throughout the day on MSNBC on cable and MSNBC.com. I'm Tom Brokaw in New York. I'll see you later.